Hi there, thanks for joining. I started this channel because I like sharing what I've learned so far about painting and hopefully sometimes even motivate people to start painting or to try different things in painting. But I got a really important question, I think. And so this is a bit of a kind of a different video. I'll talk a lot in this video, but I guess for a lot of people there may be some important things here. First, let me read the question. It's of Fierce Flyer 5. Sometimes I feel blocked or don't think I'm progressing as fast as I think I should. Maybe you can do a video on these subjects. Your videos always get me motivated to pick up a brush and try to get some paint on a canvas. So, great to hear that sometimes you can get motivated by the videos. At the same time, of course, this is a little bit sad to read because I wish everyone a joyous painting time. But on the other hand, reality is that, of course, the learning process doesn't work that way. It isn't always only joy and happiness. The learning process almost never is a straight line up, and it wouldn't be fun if everything would be that easy. And that's the strange thing about this. Without this frustration sometimes, the fun part wouldn't be that fun. So first off, it can be beneficial to accept that the learning process is a process indeed. So there are moments of frustration, but there are also moments of happiness and joy. And things in between, of course. So now I have some bullet points that can be helpful. First is practice outside the context. In sports and in music and in a lot of other things, we are used to practicing outside of the context. When you start playing an instrument, you get some exercises of your teacher. And these practices help later to play more difficult pieces. And with sports it's the same. Maybe you set a goal, you train. With painting I almost never see people do that. We all start with a canvas and we say, okay, I'm gonna paint the portrait of the Queen. And we don't have much painting experience and we start painting and then we are not satisfied with the result. But that's no wonder. Painting portraits is difficult. There are a lot of technical things that I can break down and that all come together in painting portraits. Tonal values are difficult within portraits, colors are difficult, proportions, perspective, you name it, everything comes together in portraits. So, what you could do when you want to practice portraits is first focus on certain parts of the process. So maybe you want to get better at the proportions of a portrait. So you study with books or with videos and you try to draw the proportions correct and you focus on that. And if the proportions are correct enough, you stop. You don't start blocking in light, shadow and colors and all that kind of stuff, because that is not what your focus is on this moment. You want to study proportions, then stick to that. For a few weeks, months, doesn't matter. And you will learn that way that not only is it very beneficial, because it's easier to practice one thing at a time, but also it is fun. And people never believe me, but it is. And yeah, people believe me when they really do it. But there are not many people who really do this, sadly enough. And the fun thing is, when you do this, you improve very quickly because you're focused on an easy task and it's fun to do. And when you practice proportions for your portraits, you not only do that for your portraits, but you do it for everything that you're gonna paint from now on. So every small bit that you learn, you take with you. Another example in practicing outside of the context is, again with portraits as an example, if I want to study tonal values, then I don't want to spend time focusing on proportions. So in that case, use shortcuts to quickly put a sketch on the canvas or on the paper. Maybe you can trace the photograph, or you can use a projector, you can use a grid method and that kind of stuff. But the easier, the better. So tracing ideal. You don't want to lose time and energy with the proportions every time you want to practice the tonal values. And of course, if you want to practice proportions, then never use shortcuts for that, because then you want to practice that yourself. Next thing, focus on the process and not on the result. Of course, a nice result is great, but it can be a kind of a trap. The thing is, often we want to paint because we want to make something that we are proud of. Some people genuinely can paint and they can be very happy with the results for years on end. Personally, I don't have that. When I finished my painting, I think, okay, that's great, on to the next one. And I don't stick with the result that long. And I enjoy it for 5 minutes and then I think, okay, it's time for something new. Because I like the process of painting and of learning things and improving and figuring out how to do this. And the result, it's great. If others like the result, that's great. And but for me, that doesn't matter anymore. Next point, set realistic goals. For instance, if you're just starting with painting, don't say to yourself, tomorrow I want to finish my first portrait of the Queen. That's not gonna work. When you're actually just starting with paint, well, then you're in the beginning, you're just busy with how do I get the paint out of my tube, how do I mix the colors, what kind of palette do I need, and all kind of that stuff. Those simple things take up a lot of your concentration in the beginning. Later on, luckily, that goes automatically. So then you take a simple subject and just start painting. And you say to yourself, it doesn't matter if everything goes wrong, I'm just starting. In the beginning, of course, you come out of nowhere and you start painting, so the steps that you take in the beginning are gigantic. But after that, it gets tough. You think, ooh, there are millions and millions of other things I don't know yet. And that's another thing in the learning process. The more you learn, the more you see what you don't know. So, and don't let that discourage you. That's just the way it is. Another point that's very important, change of perspective. When you're painting all the time, we all know that feeling, you cannot see clearly anymore. Yeah? You get obsessed, you see things that others don't see because, yeah, you're with your nose in the painting. So people always say, what happened to your nose? Especially if you've painted for a longer period of time. You get a little bit tired and you get a little bit grumpy and you say, oh, this isn't gonna work, etc., etc. And then it's time to stop painting, take a picture with your phone and take a break for maybe a few hours or maybe even a whole night. And the next morning when you wake up, at least that's with me, I'm most optimistic always in the morning. In the morning, when I take a look at the photograph that I made on my phone, I see the same painting and I see it with completely different eyes. I think, wow, there are a lot of very good things in this painting, but I also see very clearly some things that I can adjust to make it better. So that picture on the telephone, that creates a sort of an emotional distance between me and the painting. And in my opinion, that fresh look in the morning is the more objective look, because that other look from I don't see it and it's not gonna work, that isn't helpful. And that look that you have in the morning is helpful because you instantly see things, I can improve this, I can do that. Another thing is try not to be too perfectionistic. So it's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes the whole day, and Bob Ross called them happy little accidents. We all know that. If we do everything perfectly all the time, then there's nothing to learn. But when we make mistakes, you can search for a solution, but sometimes also mistakes turn out to be very good. Or maybe not in the context of this painting, but you remember it for a next painting. The most things I learned in Photoshop and in the video editing software was by pressing at the wrong buttons accidentally. And then I thought, wow, hey, a shortcut for this thing. or I didn't even know that this was possible with this software. And that's great if you have that moments. And in painting you encounter that as well. There's a fine line between taking a break and procrastinating. If we're busy painting and we think, it's not gonna work, then it's very easy to give up and say, I take a break, and then your break never ends. Because in a way you're a little bit stuck. Try to find something that you can do at that moment. The eye of the person isn't quite right, let's adjust that. The light and dark isn't quite right, let's adjust that. And that's easy to do because there's always something you can do, and that's no problem at that moment. And then the next thing follows, and the next thing, and the next thing. And before you know it, you get to the closing stages of the painting, and then it gets fun again. Also, last but not least, of course, it is great to be inspired by other artists. And so you can look on Instagram, or you can buy books, or you can watch videos. It's all great, but watch out. There's a big pitfall, and that is that you're gonna compare yourself with other artists and that you're gonna be harsh to yourself. Also keep in mind, these artists don't show the complete process, of course. You see the end result, or you see a time-lapse video. Whenever I make time-lapse videos, I always see what happens. Because when I'm painting, I have the same feelings as all of you. There are moments that I think, this is never gonna work. There are moments of ecstatic joy, everything. And but you don't see that in a time-lapse. In a time-lapse, then I see, hey, when you look back and at a high speed, everything looks logical. It looks almost as if I started with a plan for the painting from A to Z, and everything works out just fine. It's all planned out and everything works as intended. But that's never the case. For most people, including myself, it's a process, and it's a process with ups and downs. And in all time lapses on Instagram of other artists as well, it looks great and it's fun, but keep in mind you don't know what happened in the whole process, the thoughts, the feelings. I know for sure that most artists aren't the whole day long painting with a happy smile on their face. That's just not how it is. And for people who do it as a hobby, leisure, then of course it's meant to be fun. But even then, fun of course is relative, because you need a little bit of struggle sometimes as well to encounter fun. So that's the thing. And of course also don't forget that professional artists usually started at a very young age painting and drawing, and never stop doing that. So it is always tricky to compare yourself with those kind of artists. That's just the way it is. Also, a very common thing known by all artists is the so-called ugly stage of a painting. Build your painting with a sketch and first global color layers or something, and there's always that phase that you say, what an ugly painting this is gonna be, and this isn't gonna work. And that is exactly the stage that you just need to brainlessly continue. Because it's normal. At that stage it doesn't work, because the colors aren't all correct yet, and colors play a big part, colors or tonal values, and they all interact with each other. And only when those things start interacting correctly with each other, then you get the feeling, okay, maybe this isn't that bad after all. And then you can start adding some details at spots where you want it. And well, in most cases, it's gonna be all right. So in painting you also have to be a little brave. We all the people that are watching and that are actually painting are in a way very brave. Don't forget what a special kind of thing we are doing. We are replicating a three-dimensional world on a flat surface, just with some paint and brushes. So keep that in mind as well. That's not a small thing, that is a big thing. We forget that because we're used to it. We've gotten used to that aspect of the painting, but then we set higher goals for ourselves and we get frustrated. When you feel a little bit down and you're not sure and you think, I don't make progression, just do the work, just start painting, never mind, because at least you're doing something then. And then you have the chance that things happen, and that happy little accidents happen, and that you suddenly do make progression. Because a big problem, of course, a lot of people suffer from that, is procrastination. When we start doubting too much and thinking too much, we quit painting altogether. We don't even start painting again. And that's a waste. Because I'd rather have you painting than that you say, oh, I don't know, I don't make progression. Maybe it's due to the wrong brushes or the wrong paper or the wrong canvas, and you don't paint, and that way nothing is happening. So better to just paint than to do nothing. Another important thing, look back at your old work and see what progression you made in the years. You don't have to do that every day, but when you're feeling a little bit down and you think, I'm not progressing at all, now I bet you look at paintings from a year ago and you will see a lot of progression. It's almost impossible that you have learned nothing. Also, be grateful for the other things that painting does. And that is that you're doing at that moment something completely different than what you do the rest of your day. Painting is also a way to relax a little bit and, well, to do something completely different. And that is very healthy, I guess. Yeah, remember what it brings you on in totally other unexpected ways. And with perfectionism, it is also the case that I know how difficult it is because, believe it or not, I'm a little bit like that as well. And if I would give in to it, there would be happening absolutely nothing. I wouldn't make paintings and I wouldn't make these videos, because these videos, I never look back at them because they're never perfect enough. I always could have done everything better. And if you're one of those people who just dares to paint, even though maybe it isn't as perfect as you want it to be, but still you are painting, you are making things, you are changing the world. And otherwise there wouldn't be a painting. You're never gonna reach perfection, so that's an illusion. Perfectionism isn't always only bad, because for instance this painting, I brought it today to the studio because I want to adjust something that's bothering me all the time. Here is a perspective error. This yellow line doesn't need to go to this white line. It needs to bend a little bit there. And when I finished the painting, I didn't see that, but later on I saw it. And of course, that's something I can easily adjust, and I will. So in those cases, I'm grateful that I'm being bothered enough by that to say, okay, I want to adjust it so that the painting gets better. So you see, so it has downsides, but it also has some qualities. Thanks for watching, see you next time.